All right, cool. So dollar, actually, let me put that over here. All right, so we already know what our swing narrative is, and that was pretty much the bearish play overall based on our pretty much failed potential flag. I wouldn't say it's a failed flag until, you know, the X is met, but we have already discussed the POI, we discussed the internal reaction, so we know from a swing perspective we could technically be bearish, right? But we know that internally it's always a different story. So you guys know, right, that we already got an internal reaction, right? The internal reaction failed. Let me actually delete this stuff here. All right, so we already know obviously where our structural range is. We now know that we have a failed reaction in place, right? Pretty much a failed flag in the pretty much inversely compared to the daily time frame, right? And where we had pretty much optimism to the upside to complete the pullback, which then led to the reaction to the downside, which led to preliminary structure breaks, meaning that changes the internal narrative, which would probably be a minor intraday, into obviously a bearish scene. So when that fails, this becomes crucial because it's not a sense of is this now a reversal? It's about pretty much understanding what this is signifying to you, and that I'm overcomplicating that, but aka structural disruption. So because structural disruption is now leading into obviously the taking out of previous structure, that is now considered a bullish liquidity grab, and an internal potential sign of unwillingness because the continuation failed. All right, but I don't necessarily want to count that out just yet, even though technically as of now we are bullish, and I'm only basing that off of bullish structural disruption. And once we start to zoom in where we are currently in price, obviously I'm going to move. This is where we are from a major intraday sense, technically bullish structural range. And when we read order flow, right, you could say that there is a liquidity grab here, but I don't necessarily care about this. I care about what is happening internally. So we know that this was yesterday and we tried trading this and we unfortunately just didn't get any success. I'll show you more on EU, but right, in essence what I'm more so caring about here is the structural shift, right, leading right into a new higher high. This is news though, and overnight, yep, 1:45 2 a.m. over that London session, we actually came back and retested, or not retested, but came back and took out preliminary structure, pretty much creating a bearish narrative, right? But once we then see failure to come to the upside, then we have bullish liquidity grabs, right? And then we start seeing choppy structure. Trading this becomes a lot less appealing just because we don't have certainty in the direction, right? For one, there is no clear mitigation from major intraday. We know that our major intraday is bullish, even though we can try to assume that our overall swing is bearish, but our minor intraday is choppy. So in my opinion, makes it very, very hard to trade in terms of from a risk perspective. So whenever, right, I'm trying to judge this narrative, and we saw this morning, I'm pretty sure Tomas pointed this out to us, right, the inefficiency field. But before we get to that, right, I want to acknowledge what price is doing, right? We're obviously contracting, meaning a move is about to happen. So we got a failed flag pattern overnight last night, right? So because that is now dictating a narrative, well, I'm now trying to look into potentially where my next structural range is. So we know that our minor intraday could technically be considered bullish because of this, even though the major is also bullish, but the swing could arguably be bearish. But when I'm starting to zoom into my minor intraday, you could argue that this is your structural range, right? Because we have not challenged lows or highs. So when I'm acknowledging directional bias, I want confluence, right? Obviously you want bullishness, so it's hard to trade unless we show signs of bullishness, because up until here, no lower high has been broken. So once we get that bullish liquidity grab, that is showing its hand, right? And then seeing, for example, now the pullback, which arguably, you could also argue, let me change the color for this. Internally, you could also argue, without acknowledging higher time frame, right, just trying to be dynamic, you can also argue that there is a preliminary structure break and you're technically bearish, and this solidifies the range, even though this did not take out structure, which kind of invalidates it, but just trying to be open to the second bias, right? The only way now for me to justify a buy, right, is unwillingness, which is based on, right, the inefficiency fill. So we now have higher highs, higher lows, bullish order flow, bullish structure, and that is what's giving us this push today. So what's concerning me the most is that there really isn't certainty right now in terms of overall direction, because we know what our swing potential bias is based on obviously our mitigation leading into preliminary structure break, bearish liquidity grab. So technically we can try to assume, right, that this is just contracting. We'll probably head for liquidity and continue lower, but because of the time frame that we're on, we know that internally we just can't, quote unquote, rely on that, because you need those intraday transitions to obviously make plays, right? If you're pursuing, obviously, quote unquote, high risk to reward. So when I'm looking at this now, right, I'm always looking to see where our solidified points are, because those are mainly potential areas of SC. So we see equal highs being taken out, and we see inefficiency fill potentially there. So we failed to bounce here properly with strong order flow, because it's 1 tap, 2 tap, 3 tap. So this POI, I wouldn't really consider it much of importance. So we've already taken out previous liquidity, and if we were to have a bearish transition, then this makes sense for a bearish scenario. So if this obviously gives us, right, a structural disruption, or even an order flow disruption to the upside, then obviously that's showing its hand. So I'm more so wanting to see what happens within XPOI, right, to then get a conclusion. And the reason why I always do this is, right, is because it's reaction based, not POI based. For example, let me go to the Discord. Right, like for example, I showed you guys this, just something I'd marked, just seen at school, and let me see. Okay, so I'd shown you guys this 1, 2, right? So obviously, well, actually we can just show you the chart, but this was obviously that chart that I showed you guys before, and if we're looking at EU, literally from just that POI there, you could see that at the moment that had hit already TP1, which would have been solidified low, and that was what, 60 pips, right? But this is not reaction based. This is POI based, right? This would be reducing, you know, your POI to the best of your ability in terms of order flow, to then set a sell limit, buy limit, to expect, you know, that, I don't want to say it's guessing, but it's not reactive based. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not reactive based, but I wouldn't call it guessing if there's a proper plan, you know, backed by it. But that would be more so a POI based, not reactive based. Whereas, for example, I'll show you an example with AU today. I ran a little drill today. I wanted to see, just because the price action was super choppy, I wanted to see how price would react, and seeing if this is just like just something I was thinking about. And I was like, I wonder if you can do realistically what people used to do with break retest using X concepts, right? Where I don't know if you guys remember back in the day where people used to, let's say there's, right, where people are pretty much looking at price, you're obviously marking out your zones or whatever, right? So let's say now we're either going to, depending on which direction we break, you're gonna, I don't know if you guys remember that. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about with this. Just simple break retest. This is like probably the first strategy everybody learned. Oh, if you've been trading for like a couple years. Yeah, so that's pretty much what this is composed of. So I wanted to run a drill today to see how it would work with potential order flow and with seeing how we are to react internally. And that, well, actually, I'll come back to that. We'll just go over EU real quick. Because the thing with EU is this was super choppy, and we tried to trade this yesterday. Where is this? 217. I believe I traded it here. Yep, it was there. We're pretty much the position, I don't recall, let me see. I'm trying to remember what time I sent this. Around 9. Right here, found it. And this is pretty much what we were trading yesterday. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, we're trying to trade price, choppy price action. Not this. Was it this one? I believe. I believe at the time, I don't know if Alfie's on the call, but I remember I said that that I was potentially looking at bullishness here, unless that orange line broke, which I'm surprised I didn't. Okay, whatever. But you know, obviously that orange line had broken, so now I considered to be bearish. Right, but the only reason why I'm not going to set a limit here, right, is because direction is still uncertain. There's potentially still a liquidity grab here, which is what the trade is based around. But although we have created a new low, there is equal highs, so this could easily transition to take out previous liquidity. So I waited, right? Got the reaction off the POI, right? 3 things that happen at a POI: open 50% or LG. And I believe this was the M3 wick, if I recall correctly. And that was pretty much, right? The entry led into TP1, which is scalp. Very, very minor partial, but that inevitably came up to pretty much give a whiplash. And that's pretty much no man's land. Not something I want to trade anymore. Done for the day. Sorry about that. Right, but as we zoom out, right, you can see that there's so much choppy price action, and as of now we're seeing, right, that bearish move to the downside. So let me delete all this. All right, so as of now, right, I'm trying to see how we are going to close for the week. Right, which is very indecisive. And personally, I would love a little bit more bullishness just so we can get, obviously, bearish transition on bullish pullback of bearish trend. That's technically what I want in terms of, you know, a scenario, right? But internally, we might not get that, especially because, for example, we've already challenged the high. We challenged the high, we gave a recovery, a bearish liquidity grab, meaning we are bearish. And now, if we are to take out this, right, which would probably then take out the full POI, meaning that's external order flow disruption based on POI. That would mean that we are full on bearish, right? If this reaction here continues down to the downside. So obviously it's looking bearish in my opinion, but I can't make that judgment fully until after the orange line is taken out. So now for the scenario that I was telling you about, I was looking at price action today. Where was it? Let me actually see where it was. I know I left it marked out right here, 857. So I was watching this. Okay, so prior to that, right, the scenario is here. What I was watching, right, was what had happened the night before, which was obviously the contraction, and right then the bearish trend into the downside via order flow, via structure. So technically we are bearish and we are pursuing previous liquidity. So I was trying to see how this would react. I don't know why I can't. I guess I'll just go ahead and show it on here, just even though it's a black screen. So it was right here at the moment, right? I know that technically I want to be bearish, but I need some type of model to play in order to make the play. And I know that I'm bearish because even though there is equal highs up here, right, we know that structurally, right, obviously internally we are bearish. And I know that if I were to get a failed reaction or anything of such, right, that would give me fuel to then give that full bearish move. So I was looking at this on M1, right? I was looking at the reaction based on bullish POI and then the reaction based on bearish POI. So I don't want to trade this necessarily unless we give a failed reaction. And as you can see, technically you could say these are quote unquote support resistance, but obviously it's not that, and it's different in every way, right? But just for analogy purposes, so we know that there's obviously the bearish POI, bullish POI. So as soon as the bearish POI takes out, right, a previous wick, right, that shows bearish liquidity grab, and that pretty much continues price to the downside, meaning there's strong bullish order flow, right, strong bearish order flow, weak bullish order flow. And this is now, if we zoom out, once that new structural range is made, we know that obviously we are now bearish. This liquidity is not important to me anymore. We know that we are bearish. We've taken out previous structure points, right? And the recovery into an M5 wick that took liquidity based on a failed reaction internally gave me the scenario to the downside. So I was just watching that this morning. So I didn't really want to trade it because of just how choppy everything was. But I mean, even if you aren't trading that, you can find re-entries. It's just after that there was no entry. But yeah, just easy 30 pips. I was just looking at that from an intraday sense to see what happens based on failed reactions. And I mean, you can probably make a model off that if I'm being completely honest. Just because from a theory perspective, if you have a failed reaction, then you can only go two directions, up or down, right? And if you're uncertain, that's no man's land. But if you have a failed reaction in one direction, then you obviously have to go the other way. So that's pretty much how disruption was formulated. But yeah, anyways, back to AU, sorry. So this one looking very bearish in my opinion, very, very bearish. Would not be surprised if we start challenging these previous lows, because yeah, we are still bearish on a swing. Major intraday, minor intraday, I would say yes, we are bearish now, just because the bullish solidified low here, what has been taken out. So I mean, I don't see why we don't continue lower. Yeah, also, I'm pretty sure Jason is not on the call. Yeah, he's not on the call, but I've been on his ass about this stock that he told me to buy, and it's just not been going good. Let me see. This has not been going good at all. I know it's already moved, which is cool. Yeah, I was watching this earlier today. It actually moved a lot. Wow. Let me see if I could find that markup. Actually, I don't want to show that. Right here. Pretty much seeing I don't want to pick a low, but I was peeping this. All right, that's been taken out, and I was pretty much looking at seeing what would happen within that discount range. And where is this markup? Nope. Yeah, right there. So yeah, just took that live. I hope we get that full pullback, but I mean, I'm not trying to pick a low here. So yeah, hopefully this can finally get me out of DD and I can pay the bills. But yeah, anyways, that pretty much covers today. DXY acting weird. Transition took a bit of time, but it looks like this wants to maybe push a little bit higher. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah, that does look like it wants to reverse, so we'll see. All right, let's see if we can get that bearish transition, or we break and we can start aiming for, you know, previous POIs. So does anybody have any questions? Chat. Excuse me. Can I show why I thought they was bearish? Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Gonna close this. All right, cool. Unmute your mic, please.
All right, bro. The reason why I was saying that DXY potentially could be bearish, why I was saying EU go bullish was simply just based off of it was obviously we had a reaction to this POI, so we already had that there. It was swept liquidity. Looking daily at the investment structure was bullish, but the thing that was concerning me was this. And this inefficiency here at 50% could potentially present unwillingness, and then looking at how we reacted from that standpoint. Once we got that reaction to that daily 50% efficiency, we took this here, we took this liquidity, and we had this low, and so all week, when it came to EU, I believe it was EU right around here. To me, this is correct, right? This would solidify this range. This break here would solidify this entire bullish range, right? Because I see some people saying that I'm assuming that they were using this.
I mean, look at this too. Where is this line? So once I see this and this, that gives me bearish sense.
Okay.
Failed reaction, yeah.
And because like just based off of this, I was just assuming okay, solidified range. We were just counter-trending down. We reached the POI, which was I think an 8-hour wick. I believe.
But yeah. Also, hold on. Go back to that same spot. Just because you said they were using this.
I believe somebody was using that as a solidified point. I don't know if he was. I posted in the chat earlier this week. I believe he used this. I believe it's a solidified point. Maybe I'm wrong.
So that would be for this range, meaning the pullback has now started. I wouldn't say that's for the entire range, but now that begins the pullback. So let me see this. So now you have internal bearish here, unwillingness, break, solidified, solidified low, right? That means then you have a push up, down, up, so solidified point would be here, right? So now that you see this, that would be a failed reaction.
And I did initially when price was in this area, I did see that, and I'm like, all right, solidify, but if you zoom out, you go to this 4-hour time frame. I don't know if you remember last week when we were on the Zoom, and I was like, this break solidifies this range, and this would just be using this major intraday time frame. So from there, I was just assuming, okay, me mostly using this as my range. The POI reaction, obviously, then the BOS, and then internally we shifted bullish, which is why I was saying EU to the moon, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I guess I got a little bit confused.
Yeah, so the issue with structure is that it's, how do I say this? You don't want to be too linear about it. Do you know what I mean by being linear?
Yeah, just a little bit.
You want to be... Yeah. I know you get what I mean with being that, but for example, I will go to H4 after this, but just based on this, I see a push, I see a pullback based on distance, right? I see a solidified point potentially, right? So I know that internally we are now bullish, right? So when I see that, right, then I see a bearish reaction. That technically means that we're going to be bearish, right? Because remember, that's what we were anticipating at the time on the Zoom. And that inevitably leads into this, right? So if you go to H4 now, all right, is this a higher high?
Yeah, yes. It's subjective. I mean,
it's a higher high, but it's not a substantial new high. And I know I brought that up a lot. So because it's not a substantial new high, it means that momentum has now slowed down. That's a substantial new high. That's not a substantial new high, right? So in order for me to consider, right, obviously the continuation, it's ideal just based on a rule set, but from the perspective of reality, yeah, it's not that clear. It's not that simple. It's not that straightforward. Right, so that's why substantial new highs are always something that I don't necessarily want to consider as a new higher high. Right, and that's why after you see this, I more so acknowledge the liquidity grab.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. So long story short, this was an unsubstantial highs, and therefore you wouldn't really
consider it fully bullish.
Right. That's the subjective part. I kind of figured out because I think I talked about this last month. If we were going to continue this weekly bearishness, we never tapped the 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And this was seen as an inducement, and then we finally tapped it.
Mm-hmm.
Which
yeah, and also, I don't want to also say that makes it full on bearish, because that's also not true. Right, what I want this to acknowledge is that internally you are bearish, so you need a bullish transition to get that long continuation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that was really the only confusion I had.
I mean, by all means, it could still keep going, bro. If I'm being honest.
And then, like I said, I wasn't selling you until we seen internal, until we seen price break, which it did. Then this is solidified range. But again, DXY is a little bit interesting for the simple fact that this weekly POI, I'm still just making note of that. And on top of that, I'm just seeing price reacting here. And then we already have, like you noted earlier, I forgot what time frame around was that, SC or something? On a different time frame.
Dollar? Where?
Where we get some type of reaction. This.
Oh yeah.
And then obviously measured out, this could present an unwillingness, which would then flow with that weekly POI, reaction, unwillingness, SC, percent drop. So, which would mean that EU, then, I'm just looking at it from the perspective of not a break of structure, but just intent, understanding that this whole entire leg could still, price could still come somewhere all the way down here and then finally go up. And be balanced.
Or at least clear liquidity.
What was that?
At least clear liquidity.
Right.
For example, this is where order flow is sitting right now. It's right there.
And that's
so yeah, if we were to sweep that would complete the objective. So for example, if we sweep this and then continue higher, that would complete the objective of what this means, which is unsubstantial new high. Right, so that means bearish order flow has a purpose. So you could say that we solidified a low. So just take that out. That would be ideal.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was kind of saying.
It is confusing though, just because this is taking its time.
Yeah, for sure. And then I know a lot of people got caught up in all of this.
Yeah.
Again, price showed its hand when it did this, and then you got like a transition. Earlier, I believe, this morning. Like even if you're using this,
yep.
No, it's kind of an aggressive transition, but even using high, low, high, BOS, tracement, boom, pull back. So
I was a bit disappointed we didn't get that.
Yeah. That's really it. That's all.
Yeah. Cool, let me see. Anybody have any questions? How many people do we have on? $14. Cool. Does anybody have any questions? Because then, if not, I'm probably going to cover one more thing and probably wrap this up. Let me see, chat. Studying and learning. Yeah, choppiness. It happens. In terms of major intraday. Yeah, but the thing about AU is that out of AU and EU, this has been the most bearish out of all of them. So in any type of transition, I would be selling. But yeah, I would say we are potentially bullish here. Yep, but just remember, you want to catch bearish transitions on bullish trends of overall swing bearish biases. Yeah, this was a pain this week. A little bit. Actually, I'm kind of disappointed I didn't get that trade that I was talking about earlier, because honestly, that could, I didn't really notice that was actually such a big trade. Because this could, I mean, like we said, this one's probably the most convincing out of all. But yeah, any more questions? How are you guys doing? Did you get you today? No. No, this is way too ugly for me. It still is super ugly. Too many wicks, too choppy. I don't want to catch M1 continuations, because then I don't know when it's going to reverse on me. Like, I'm pretty sure there was some M1 continuations. Yep, avoiding sloppy conditions, yep. But yeah, hopefully next week will be a lot better. But just remember, the bigger the transition, I mean, the longer the transition, the bigger the move. That's why this took its time. See, the longer the transition, the bigger the move, and this isn't done. Like, who's to say this doesn't? You know? Yeah, it's getting, yeah, it's becoming a common thing now. Yeah, hopefully within like the next 6 months, we should be seeing more of that. Definitely want to see more people on the calls. But I mean, I can't force that out of them, so. If you do, cool. If not, that's cool too. Because it's, and the reason why I say that is, it's kind of like something that backfired on me. So I asked you guys to tell me questions, blah, 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 to show me studies, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, the entire point of the process is to practice good habits early, which means independence, understanding over memorizing, and, you know, stuff like that. So it's kind of, you know, that's kind of one of the cons, I guess, is that you've already been shown and forced to be independent. So, you know, yeah, and they're put on the spot too, and a lot of people don't like that. So yeah, I kind of just, like, if you don't show anything, that's cool. I mean, I get, you know, I get people's DMs. Some people don't DM. It's cool. Like, I know people are working in the background, and then 3 months later they come, oh, look at this, this, and this. Cool, what's up? You know? But yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody has any questions. But I do have a question for you. Is, who's been in the group since... for about a year now? Who's been in the group for about a year? Anywhere from like 9 to 15 months, anywhere in that range. Pretty sure almost everybody on the call. Almost. Probably like 70%, 60%. You will be till April? Yeah. So, who has seen, or who has actually paid attention to Sergio's whole NFT thing? Who has like been like, you know, at first, obviously you guys remember when you first got into it, and then now obviously you guys are seeing, you know, the fruits. Who in here actually paid attention? Right, damn, so you guys don't give a fuck about Sergio or what? Like, all I'm asking is who has noticed it, acknowledged it, seen it just happen. Yeah, cool. So let me ask you another question. Who used to get on Sergio's mindset calls back in the day when he first started them? Right, Harsh, I do know you. Yep. Right, and honestly, it was about, on average, I don't think he got more than like 5 people. But if you notice, all of those calls that he used to do with mindset, I'm not trying to get on you for not getting on the calls, but what I'm trying to say is his entire time from, I want to say from like February maybe to like the summer, was just focusing on that mindset part of stuff. All those cool, like he was teaching all the mental models, inversion, circular competence, you know, all the mental models, a bunch of psychology stuff, right? And for the people that weren't paying attention to him, shame on you, shame on me too for a lot of those. But as you can see, he's enforced or incorporated those mental models, everything he used to talk about in those calls, into NFTs, right? Into understanding the NFT world, blah blah blah. And a year later, now motherfucker's making bread, you know? So I think it's cool for you guys to notice somebody literally start from nothing in the industry to becoming something in the industry, and then maybe down the line be the shit. You know, you never know. But yeah, I just want you guys to notice that the good things take time, a lot of patience, right? But if you actually set your mind to it, more power to you, man. Yeah, and then now that he told you guys that he started from 1 ETH, and then now that he's at X ETH, I'm not going to say how much, but now that you guys are seeing that, now you guys want to pay attention to the stuff. Now you guys want to get into NFTs. Now you want to do this and this. Then where were you last year? You know what I'm saying? Like, and obviously that doesn't go for the people that just joined, right? But where were you a year ago? But yeah, just something to think about. But with that being said, I'll probably, unless you guys have some more comments, I'll probably wrap it up right here. Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. Like, my point isn't to get into NFTs. My point is that if you're into NFTs now, why weren't you it in the back in the day? You know what I'm saying? Why is it until now that you're seeing this, and this? You know? Yeah. That's not the point I'm getting. I'm not telling you to get into NFTs. I'm telling you to notice the process that it takes from becoming nothing in something to something in something, or someone in something. Sorry. That's the entire point. Yep, perfect. But yeah, you guys definitely hop on those calls. I have the notes, so it's all good. But yeah, with that being said, I'll probably wrap it up right here. Yeah, man, you guys have a great weekend.